Okay, so let's jump right in. We're going to explore a pretty wild idea today. What if your future health, how smart you are, and even how much money you make were all pretty much written in stone during a tiny window of time before you could even walk? I mean, really think about that for a second. What if the most important programming for your entire life happened before you could even form a sentence? What if the blueprint for your health as an adult and your ability to earn a living was set not in college or high school, but in the first couple years of your existence? It sounds pretty dramatic, I know, but that's exactly where the science is pointing. You see, the period we're talking about has a name. Scientists call it the first 1,000 days, and it's a very specific window of time. It starts at conception, and it closes on a child's second birthday. This isn't just some random number. It's a biological window of opportunity that is completely unique. There's no other time like it in our entire lives. So, what makes these 1,000 days so special? Well, it's this unique double-edged sword. It's a period of incredible, almost fragile vulnerability, but it's also a period of unparalleled opportunity. And what happens during this time, or just as important, what doesn't happen, can literally echo for a lifetime. The big reason this all matters so much comes down to one word: speed. The rate of growth and development going on inside that tiny body is faster than at any other point in your life. I mean, we're talking about the biological foundations for your organs, your immune system, your entire brain, all being laid down at this just astonishing pace. And that insane speed makes a developing child super sensitive to one key thing: nutrition. To really get your head around this, let's just focus on the most complex thing being built during this time: the human brain. Think about it like you're constructing a biological supercomputer from scratch, and you have to do it all on a very, very tight schedule. The scale of this construction project is just mind-boggling. Get this. In an infant's brain, more than 1 million new neural connections, or synapses, are formed every single second. That is not a typo. It's an explosion of growth that builds the entire architecture for all future learning, behavior, and health. And every last one of those million connections needs specific nutritional building blocks to form correctly. And as you can see here, the demands are super specific and they're constantly changing throughout pregnancy. In that first trimester, when the neural tube is forming the brain and spine, things like folate and choline are absolutely non-negotiable. Then, in the second trimester, as the body is just shooting up in size, protein and calcium take center stage. And then, in the home stretch, the third trimester, it's all about rapid-fire brain maturation, which is fueled by nutrients like omega-3s. It's a precisely timed construction project, and you gotta have the right materials at the right time. And we're not talking about just some vague vitamins. No, these things have highly specialized jobs. Folic acid, for example, is so critical for preventing devastating birth defects of the brain that the CDC recommends all women who could become pregnant take 400 micrograms every day. Iron is needed to build the insulation, the myelin, around nerve fibers, which basically determines how fast your brain can send signals. Choline is directly linked to memory, and zinc is required just to create new neurons in the first place. You can see how, without these raw materials, the whole construction project starts to fall behind schedule, fast. Now, here's where it gets really interesting. The impact of this early nutrition doesn't just stop at age 2. No way. It actually programs our bodies for the rest of our lives, setting us up for either a lifetime of health or a struggle with disease decades down the road. This whole idea actually has a name. It's called the Developmental Origins of Health and Disease, or DOHAD for short. And the core theory is that a fetus is constantly adapting to its environment inside the womb. If it senses that resources are scarce, meaning the mother has poor nutrition, it changes its whole physiology to survive. It does this through what are called epigenetic changes, which are kind of like on-off switches for our genes. And that programming sticks with you for life. This is where something called the mismatch theory comes into play. So imagine a fetus gets programmed for a world of scarcity. Its body becomes incredibly efficient at storing every single calorie it can get. It develops what's called a thrifty metabolism. But what happens if that child is then born into a world of abundance, surrounded by fast food and high-calorie snacks? Well, you get a mismatch. The body that was programmed to save everything is now totally overwhelmed, and that leads to a much, much higher risk of obesity, diabetes, and heart disease in adulthood. And believe me, this isn't just a theory. Tragic, real-world events in history have given us powerful, heartbreaking proof. Scientists studied people who were in the womb during the terrible Dutch famine at the end of World War II. And decades later, as adults, they showed significantly higher rates of cardiovascular disease, obesity, and even conditions like schizophrenia. Their bodies were programmed for a world of starvation that thankfully didn't last. But this story isn't just about our biology. It has massive economic consequences. It's really about building what economists call human capital. The skills, the knowledge, the health, all the stuff that allows people to be productive and successful. Okay, so if you want the single most powerful piece of evidence for all of this, you have to look at a landmark study from Guatemala. It started all the way back in 1969. Researchers ran a nutrition experiment, and then, and this is the crucial part, they followed the kids for decades to see what happened to them when they grew up. So here's how they did it. It was a proper randomized trial. In 2 villages, pregnant women and their young kids were given a nutritious, high-protein supplement called Atoll. But in 2 other very similar villages, they got a low-energy drink called Fresco. It had some vitamins, but no protein and way fewer calories. Critically, both groups got good medical care, so the main difference really was that nutritional boost. So, what happened when they checked in decades later? Well, the results were absolutely stunning. The men who had received that nutritious Atoll supplement before they turned 2 were earning, on average, 46% higher wages as adults. Let that sink in. This wasn't some small statistical blip. It was a life-changing economic advantage, and it all stemmed from better nutrition in that critical 1,000-day window. Now, let's look at the flip side, because the consequences of poor nutrition are just devastating. Stunting, which is impaired growth from malnutrition, it's not just about being short. As the analysis from that same Guatemala study shows, being stunted at age 2 is linked to completing almost 5 fewer grades of school, having lower intelligence scores, and a staggering 42 percentage point increase in the chance of living in poverty as an adult. It's a trap set in early childhood. So the crucial point here is that investing in nutrition during these first 1,000 days, it's not just a feel-good health program. It's one of the single most powerful economic development tools we have, period. Some estimates show that for every single dollar invested in these kinds of programs, a country can see a return of up to $35 in increased health and productivity. I mean, you can't get a better return on investment than that. Okay, so given these incredible stakes, it's really no surprise that this has become a huge global priority. So what's the plan? What can we actually do about all this? Let's look at the solutions both on a global scale and for us as individuals. At the highest level, the World Health Organization has set some really clear targets they want to hit by 2030. They're aiming for a 40% reduction in childhood stunting, a 50% reduction in anemia in women, and a big increase in exclusive breastfeeding rates. This basically gives a clear roadmap for governments and big organizations to follow. But hey, this isn't just about global policy. There are really clear, actionable things that can make a huge difference on an individual level. Based on CDC recommendations, one of the most powerful things is for any woman who could become pregnant to start a daily habit of taking 400 micrograms of folic acid, even before you're planning anything. That alone is a game changer. Planning ahead, eating a diverse diet, and of course, talking to your doctor, these are all powerful steps that anyone can take. And that really brings us to the final thought. The science is incredibly clear. This 1,000-day window is the single greatest opportunity we have to shape the future of a human being, to build healthier bodies, sharper minds, and more productive, more equitable societies. So if we know how to do it, the only real question left is, what are we waiting for?